Chapter 19, Fist Techniques, 2. His strength is astonishing. Unbelievable for his age, marveled Ma Yun-jeok. He stepped forward, as if he had discovered a masterpiece. His wrinkled face showed unabashed admiration as he scrutinized Jong Yunshin closely, to the visible discomfort of the handsome boy standing next to him. "Greetings, grandfather. I am Jong Yunshin of the Demon Wings," Yunshin said calmly, bowing slightly with his hands clasped in a fist salute. There was no sound until he raised his head. The air was filled with a palpable sense of doubt, confusion, and curiosity. Ma Yun-jeok's beard, which covered the front of his purple robe, trembled slightly. "You are?" Ma Yun-jeok, the former leader of the Divine Sword Squad, was a warrior of the highest rank within the desolate fortress, at the pinnacle of the white-blue-black-purple hierarchy. Those who had reached the realm of ascension and opened their upper dantian had formidable intuition. He looked at Yunshin and the faintly smiling lord of the desolate fortress, finding it impossible not to recognize something. "Jong, from the Jong family. It's our first meeting." While Ma Yun-jeok's face showed increasing astonishment, Jong Yunshin remained calm. His maternal relatives had never visited Shinya County, not even when his parents married, nor after his mother passed away giving birth to him. It was a story typical of countryside gossip, where a daughter's marriage to a low-status family effectively severed ties. Naturally, he was only known as the in-law of the desolate Ma family. "You are my sister's son?" Next to him, Ma Jin had his eyes wide open as if they might tear. It seemed their surnames were the same. It explained why Ma Yun-jeok and Ma Jin had not exchanged greetings. They were father and son. In martial families, the head's word is law. The family rules must have forbidden meetings, Yunshin thought, finding the family's attitude high-handed and unprincipled. He smiled faintly. "You mentioned a mentor, to think Master Ma Jin would be an uncle of mine. Or perhaps you are my eldest uncle. I am unfamiliar with the lineage of my maternal family. I was an outcast even in my own family, which was annihilated. I understand. As a warrior of the desolate fortress, I respect the merits established by my maternal grandfather, but I find further personal conversation and connection burdensome." A married daughter who had no further ties with her natal family. Since that was how they treated him, there was nothing more to say. It's a family so desperate for successors that they would even adopt a child. Focusing on his martial arts, Yunshin did not want to be entangled in messy family affairs. His experiences with the Jong family were more than enough. The lord of the desolate fortress, who had been watching with interest, slowly spoke. "Jong Yunshin of the Demon Wings. Your spirit is impressive." Her slightly curved eyes looked stunning. Yunshin slightly bowed his head. He felt somewhat puzzled but reassured by the lord's support. At that moment, the boy standing uncomfortably beside them spoke out. "I cannot accept this. How can someone like him claim to be a direct descendant of my grandfather? How can he be so rude to the former leader of the Divine Sword Squad?" The anger in his eyes was intense, as if he was unaware that he stood in front of the lord of the desolate fortress. "I don't need your acceptance. I'm not a member of the desolate Ma family. I'm Jong Yunshin of the Demon Wings," Jong Yunshin replied calmly. He remembered Wan Chang's words, "The martial world is a place where people introduce themselves by their nicknames shamelessly." "How dare you!" The boy's fury seemed to escalate as he turned to his step-grandfather. "Please permit me to duel him. I will prove that he is unworthy of being a blood relative." "There's no reason for it." Yunshin responded immediately. "If you seek my guidance, I'll accept. But I have no obligation to prove my worth to you or your family. Not even the captain can issue such a personal command." He spoke as if looking down from a higher place. Yunshin's white robe fluttered slightly as he stared directly at the boy. The aura flowing from him unintentionally conveyed his strength as a true warrior. While Ma Jin remained silent, the boy scoffed incredulously, raising his hand as if to strike. He must be practicing the hand arts. Yunshin noticed the pair of hand guards hanging from the boy's waist and simultaneously withdrew his chi. The instant disappearance of his aura evidenced his mastery of inner energy control. "Forgive my rudeness. I showed an undisciplined attitude." Apologizing for revealing his chi recklessly, he bowed to the lord of the desolate fortress. Ma Jin looked both proud and troubled, while Ma Yun-jeok's expression darkened further. "Stop the bickering." She quietly moved her lips. "Yun-jeok is like a close friend who has been with me for many years, and Jong Yunshin is a promising talent. It would be better to resolve this conflict as warriors. Each of you, stake what you wish. Do you agree with my suggestion? Yunshin gazed at the lord of the desolate fortress, unable to fathom her intentions. She smiled. Yunshin, I know this is not beneficial to you. As a friend of the former leader of the Divine Sword Squad, I will grant one request regardless of the outcome. If that's the case, then would that be possible? Zhong Yunshin boldly asked. He referred to the fruit of the heavenly tree. The lord's smile deepened. That's still difficult. Even if the retired Yun Jiok asks, it remains the same. His contributions as the leader of the Divine Sword Squad have already been rewarded in other ways. However, I can teach you one of my special techniques. Teach martial arts. The idea of being taught by someone close to being the best in the world was a rare fortune. The boy next to the shocked Yun Jiok seemed greedy, as if he would demand martial arts training if he won rather than follow his step-grandfather's wishes. His intentions are clear. The maternal family is interesting. They want to make someone like him their successor. Yunshin found it hard to believe his abilities were so exceptional. But given the improved terms, he nodded readily. I will do it. They headed to the training ground behind the main fortress. The sight of the lord of the desolate fortress stepping outside attracted attention, but no one dared to follow. Yun Jiok tried to subtly approach, but Yunshin boldly stuck close to the lord, causing her to chuckle. Be at ease. This place is for my use alone. The training ground was opulent, with even the floor being unusual. All kinds of invaluable weapons were lined up on stone stands, and the vast floor was entirely marble. It seemed almost too precious to step on. These must be trophies taken from the destruction of the kingdom of Dalian Yunnan. The lord of the desolate fortress was known as the Emperor's Divine Sword. She had erased several rebellious small kingdoms and large factions. Her name was never omitted when discussing the greatest in the world. It was unknown how such a petite body contained such immense divine power. This should be a good spot to watch. The lord stood still in one corner of the training ground. Her long eyelashes looked like a painting, and her long green robe fluttered softly in the spring breeze. Who? Yunshin paused momentarily. It was only then that he noticed the precious sword hanging at her waist. He realized he had perceived it as part of nature until now, indicating it was beyond the level of unity with the sword he had learned. This is chilling. What kind of level is this? At that moment, the lord of the desolate fortress turned her head and met his gaze. Her red lips curved smoothly. You have sharp eyes. Forgive me. The boy who had stood in the center of the training ground with Yunshin sneered. He now wore a pair of luxurious black handguards, fitting for an heir of the desolate Ma family, known for their martial arts. Were you ogling the lord's elegance? You lowly man. Aren't you an illegitimate child? How dare you? Zhong Yunshin did not reply further and closed his eyes slightly. I learned from this mission. The certainty gained from killing the Blood Master. He could seize the fruit of the heavenly tree himself. Martial arts training was like climbing a 1,000-foot cliff with bare hands, according to orthodox martial artists. Techniques that harmed others and themselves, such as sorcery, blood arts, and demonic arts, were not considered true martial arts. It was believed that only by building pure martial arts could one achieve the ultimate goal, similar to spiritual arts. Yunshin felt differently. To him, it was not a steep cliff but a well-paved staircase. In the realm of martial arts, he was like a fish swimming in the deep sea. The demon wings are sufficient. The vastness of martial arts he was exploring within the desolate fortress was so fertile it was hard to imagine lacking anything. He could plant any seed here and the environment would aid its growth. Thus, he did not need the desolate Ma family. Come. Yunshin opened his eyes and gestured slowly. HMPH. The boy, greatly angered, did not hesitate. He charged with a never-before-seen technique, his chi emanating from all his limbs. Thwack! Yunshin deflected the rushing fist with the back of his hand. The power of the strike was astonishing, requiring him to exert considerable force in his elbow. Whoosh! The impact from the strike tore at his clothes. The boy's inner energy greatly surpassed Yunshin's, perhaps due to rare elixirs he had consumed. Yunshin immediately infused his energy with the principles of the Fatebreaker's Codex. The energy circulating through his body multiplied at the necessary moment to bolster his strength. From then on, it was all about feeling. Following the techniques of the demon's light, his hands began to disrupt the boy's martial arts rhythm. Bam! Bam! Thud! The desolate Ma family's hand arts were straightforward. Each strike was heavy, and the chain of moves was unbroken. It seemed like he was putting all his strength into it, but suddenly energy would erupt from the opposite fist. All kinds of principles harmonized, making the techniques feel overwhelmingly powerful. So this is what real strong fists are like. Despite the boy's reckless demeanor, he had mastered his family's martial arts properly. His exceptional movements were impressive enough to inspire new ideas in Yunshin's mind. Why don't you draw your sword? Your martial arts are outstanding. Yunshin responded nonchalantly, cutting off the boy's elbow with a spinning leaf-like motion. He was reversing the situation. After witnessing the opponent's energy techniques, he understood what was possible and was discovering the methods of energy manipulation. It was all upside down. You bastard! Boom! The marble floor was dented. The wind from the boy's punch, combined with the step he took, blew fiercely, but Yunshin deflected the fist lightly, like a leaf in the wind, and landed gracefully. I was thinking about fist techniques. 10 more moves should suffice. A faint green lightning sparkled in his eyes. From a distance, the three masters were watching the duel. Observing Yunshin's movements, reminiscent of the elven race's defensive techniques, each had different expressions. Ma Yunjiok frowned deeply. He talks about ending it in 10 moves. No matter how extraordinary his talents are. No, it's not that. What he means is... Ma Jin, who had been silent for a moment, finally spoke with difficulty. He means he will create a new technique in 10 moves. Chapter 20, Fist Techniques, 3. After mentioning 10 moves without thinking, Yunshin became concerned about his opponent's rationality. Could accepting a berserk warrior's challenge in martial arts be beneficial for his cultivation? Not bad, he thought. His worries were unfounded. The calm expression on his opponent's face told him as much. This was the true strength of a prestigious family. They didn't waste their power frivolously. The fearsome part of a distinguished family was their ability to fully exert their martial prowess where it was most needed. You mentioned 10 moves, I will put my all into them, said the heir of the distinguished family, one trained by Ma Yunjiok, a former leader of the Divine Sword Squad who once dominated the world. He hadn't been taught carelessly. The waves of chi climbing up his arm were intense. This is the harmonized Blossom Fist. You can use palm techniques too. Just because I mentioned fist techniques, don't limit your moves. Show me everything you've got. He seemed angry again. Yunshin decided to stay silent. The silence didn't last long. When the intense chi settled into his opponent's body, it was clear he wasn't to be underestimated. His movements were different from before, reflecting his changed attitude. Thud! Whoosh! Yunshin saw a light footstep for the first time. As the punch swirled towards him, he countered with a charged strike. Boom! Their fists collided. It wasn't an easy feat even in a duel. It meant their concentration was at its peak. The fragments of their intersecting energies scattered over their clothes. The one pushed back was his opponent. Despite having more power, his martial arts achievement was a different matter. While his opponent swallowed a groan, Yunshin wrapped chi around his lower body. It wasn't over. The core of charged strike was accumulation. Yunshin twisted his footwork and took another step forward. The energy he accumulated wasn't disrupted and built up once more. A martial art that produced more power in a short time than the strongest strike. The air warped as his charged right fist extended. Boom! The defense of his opponent's elbow crumbled, and the punch struck his solar plexus deeply. Ah! This was what he meant by recalling strong fists. Utilizing the charged strike freely in his fist techniques. Inspired by the powerful continuous strikes of the harmonized Blossom Fist, he adjusted his approach. He gritted his teeth and corrected his form. Yunshin was still able to advance. Here I come again. You arrogant bastard. His voice sounded like a growl, probably due to the intense fight. The boy opened his palm wide. The chi changed. It was the moment Yunshin unleashed his third charged strike. The boy's left hand changed directions thrice, as if mocking his fist, and slapped the back of his hand. Thud! The boy was the one who stepped back, massaging his hand as he frowned. He seemed to be absorbing the impact of the force, which must have been substantial. Yunshin immediately understood the change he had just witnessed. It wasn't a simple feint, but a movement that built striking force with chi. Another interesting technique. He took a step forward with pleasure. The accomplishment of Zhong family dynamic training shone in this moment. The accumulated energy was held in place by the minute movement of his entire body. Boom! The charged strike of the third move was different. As he stepped down, the marble floor cracked. It was strenuous even for his body. I can handle it. With such power contained in his body, it was hard to use the defensive skills of the leaf defense technique. It meant he couldn't strike an opponent unless they were incredibly slow. But he had the demon's light. Peasant. He read his opponent's movement clearly. The trajectory to strike with the demon's light was revealed. Whoosh! Yunshin dropped down in an instant. The continuous moves of the demon's light encompassed freedom. At this moment, his movement clearly embodied a principle higher than the harmonized blossom fist. It was the fourth move. Boom! Stone fragments scattered in all directions from the step's end. He felt it through the surface of his fist. It was the sensation of something breaking. The protective chi flowing over his opponent's body shattered into pieces. Someday, I should develop a protective chi technique, too. Putting aside the sudden thought, he moved to follow the retreating opponent. At the end of his leaf-like movement, new chi gathered. 5 moves are enough. He felt the principle of his unique martial arts permeate his entire body. The accumulation of power. He stacked it however he could. The Fate Breaker's Codex and Charge Strike were like that. It was the way he, who grew up in a third-rate martial family, faced the world. Flash! A sky-blue flash glimmered in Yunshin's eyes. From within, a blue lightning bolt surged up. The secret of the harmonized blossom fist mixed with the principles of the Fate Breaker's Codex and Charge Strike. The principle of martial arts exploded in his mind and converged into a single technique. A fist technique that grew stronger with prolonged engagement. The Eternal Blossom Fist. The name that naturally came to him finally unveiled a martial art worthy of being called a special technique. As his arm swung from beside his shoulder, rubble swirled around. Whoosh dash! The energy accumulated by mere forward movement exploded in front of his opponent's solar plexus. Though he detonated it from an inch away, his opponent's upper body shook. Stumbling as if about to fall, his opponent's expression turned blank as the strength drained from his body. A fist technique embodying the essence of striking force. Now, you are no longer bound by the rotational movement of the rotational strike. Ma Jin's voice, tinged with awe, echoed from afar. We can continue if you'd like. Though he spoke to his opponent, who stood as if frozen, the boy bit his lower lip and said nothing. 3 people approached from a distance. Ma Jin looked on, the color of his face drained, while Ma Yun-jiok's frozen face was strikingly expressionless. Only the lord of the desolate fortress maintained a faint smile. A precious spectacle. Witnessing the creation of a martial art. What delightful entertainment. I am embarrassed. I hope I haven't caused any offense. Yunshin slightly bowed his head. She laughed softly. That's unnecessary. You seem to be enjoying yourself greatly. Isn't it natural for a martial artist? Have you named your fist technique? I have named it the Eternal Blossom Fist. A martial art with a name signifying endless growth. It is a fitting name. However, its meaning is straightforward, so be cautious not to let it become a weakness in actual combat. The key is to endure the initial clash with the continuous moves. With your talent, you should be able to overcome it. Thank you for the advice. Yunshin clasped his hands in a respectful fist salute. The Lord's smile deepened. Are you all right? I apologize, grandfather. On the side, the step-grandfather and grandson were exchanging words of consolation. The boy, almost in tears, stared at the ground with a face full of frustration. While patting his step-grandson's head, Ma Yun-jiok looked at Yunshin with a complicated expression. How can someone from such a small family have such brilliant talent? Even he had his pride. It was hard to speak to a grandson who had drawn such a clear line. He envied his son, who could approach as a superior. Captain. Yunshin looked at Ma Jin standing before him. Well done. And congratulations. You've gained another unique martial art. It's an excellent technique. I've only sketched out the framework. I'm not fully satisfied with the moves yet, and I still need to rely on the demon's light when using it with hand arts. Even that's impressive. There aren't many among the white uniform who could withstand your strike. I try not to be surprised, but your growth is astonishing. It needs to be faster. He mumbled, his thoughts elsewhere, ignoring the emotional gaze Ma Jin cast at him. Even Yun Jiok couldn't demand the fruit of the heavenly tree. His goal seemed even further out of reach. When will I reach that damnably large tree? The thought was so vexing it brought out a curse. Since Yunshin has won, we should wrap this up. The Lord of the Desolate Fortress's distinctive, resonant voice rang out. As he turned, he saw her still smiling. After scanning the people present, she spoke again. I will teach Yunshin the martial art he needs when he needs it. Furthermore, he may request one thing from the Desolate Ma family. I will convey my request through the captain when the time comes. Ma Jin's expression turned curious when Yunshin glanced at him. He had no desire to consider the feelings of the captain, who had suddenly become a messenger. The fault lies with them. Yunshin dismissed the thought lightly and finally looked at Ma Yun Jiok. I apologize, but I must clarify one thing. I have no obligations to my maternal family in any way. Do you agree? His response was closer to a groan. He seemed lost in thought, unable to speak easily. While Yunshin stared, Yun Jiok, with a strained expression, finally spoke. What must I do? His flawless beard trembled slightly. What must I do to earn your forgiveness? It wasn't Yunshin who reacted to this. The boy, considered the heir, couldn't hide his dismay, and Ma Jin's face also showed shock. Even the Lord of the Desolate Fortress seemed slightly surprised. Perhaps because he was the person involved, Yunshin had a completely different thought. He's terrifying. It was said that whenever the Supreme Master of the Desolate Fortress went into the martial world, he acted as an absolute ruler. Like a god holding the power of life and death over most people he encountered. It was a common rumor. Unless they were one of the grandmasters of the 9 great sects, who were revered as immortals among the common folk, they couldn't even face him in battle. Someone like that bowed to me, someone far beneath him. Simply because he was a talented blood relative. Only someone obsessed with the revival of his family would do such a thing. The thought gave him chills. He realized he needed to be careful with his words. He didn't want to become a Ma Yunshin. Seeing my maternal grandfather like this is the greatest burden. The past cannot be undone, and to me, my maternal relatives are no different from strangers. The demon wings are my family. Can't you build relationships? I don't even have enough time to build my martial arts. Even the power of the Desolate Ma family couldn't reach the fruit of the heavenly tree, and considering Yunshin's cold upbringing, he didn't know the meaning of family bonds. Neither necessity nor blood drew him to them. He shook his head and spoke again. I won the duel that your grandson recklessly demanded. Please respect me as a warrior. Ma Yun Jiok's expression was dazed, but Yunshin couldn't relax yet. Who knew what sweet tricks he might pull in the future? He suspected he was a man of madness. First, he respectfully bowed to the Lord of the Desolate Fortress and Ma Yun Jiok before turning away. Training was urgent. The newly created Eternal Blossom fist wasn't complete. Yun Jiok, you look interesting. Your expression says you regret it deeply. Lord, instead of helping me. How could I deal with your karma? Ignoring the casual chat of the Supreme Masters, he headed to the training hall of the Demon Wings. He felt Ma Jin following him. The roles were reversed from when they came. He realized he hadn't heard the name of the heir of the Desolate Ma family but wasn't particularly curious. Lightning flash. It was as they passed a small lakeside. Ma Jin, his reflection rippling in the sunlight on the water, spoke cautiously. I have a task that will help you. Chapter 21, Middle Dan Tien, 1. I must have mentioned it when I handed over the Blood Flame sect incident. Didn't I say the Mount Hua sect lost the Grand Violet Pill? The Shuangxi branch said they didn't have the capacity for that. Thanks to that, I was assigned to the Blood Master task. That's right. It's still unresolved. The Grand Violet Pill is a treasure of that caliber. It's an elixir akin to the supreme treasures of the martial world. Suspicious sects, those who want to gain favor with Mount Hua, and even rival sects and warriors who see this as an opportunity to settle old grudges have all gotten involved. All sorts of factions in Shuangxi are entangled. The warriors will be rampant, then. His expression wasn't serious. The vast martial world of Shuangxi, larger than many small countries, was completely embroiled. It was impossible not to feel excited. He had already realized it. Those who claimed to wander the world with their swords were spread throughout Shirangssi. They were all martial artists who would refine his eternal blossom fist. Could it be that his feelings were showing on his face? Ma Jin, who had made the suggestion, couldn't hide his discomfort. You'll accompany the Mount Hua sect. You'll search for the Grand Violet Pill with them until the fight is over. A warrior from another sect helping to find their elixir? It's also a form of surveillance. Mount Hua knows this too. There was already a big fight with the demonic sect, and the largest guest house in Elevenon collapsed entirely. The casualties were enormous. Your role is to restrain Mount Hua's violent actions in the center of the storm. Will Mount Hua accept this? Mount Hua wants to become the second Shaolin. They want royal recognition as the representative of the Taoist sects. Even if you go alone, you'll be well received. Of course, there will be some checks and balances. Yunshin was silent for a moment before he slowly opened his mouth. A conflict of this magnitude in the martial realm isn't common. With the justification in place, it's a position where I can swing my sword freely in actual combat. Yes. Given your talents, I think you can achieve accomplishments incomparable to mere training. It's an opportunity to freely exchange swords with renowned martial artists under the name of the Desolate Fortress. He had already agreed internally. Martial artists that hadn't experienced actual combat were not worth noting. Eternal Blossom Fist was a newly created martial art lacking forms, which he could fill in with this mission. There wouldn't be many opportunities to see the martial arts of the Line Great Sects. You've already completed one mission admirably. This time, it's at your discretion. I'll go. He didn't hesitate much. He also thought he needed to stay away from the desolate Ma family for a while. He didn't know how his insane grandfather might try to persuade him. As soon as you exchange something as a blood relative, you're firmly entangled. It could hold him back when he needed to move forward. I should accumulate merits and wander outside as much as possible without any breaks. Yunshin, who had made up his mind, lifted his head. How many people will there be? The same as the Blood Flame sect. Hyon Wenchang is a new recruit, and Chung Myong and Baek Myo are still under disciplinary action for the Azure Sky Squad. They were very eager to join. I'll be going with you. The captain will go. If it's the 9 great sects, a captain of the Divine Sword Squad must go to match the level. When will we depart? The preparations are complete, so we'll leave immediately tomorrow. Pack your things as soon as you return. Yunshin slowly nodded. He would have to learn the martial arts of the Fortress Lord after he returned. Now was the time to refine the Eternal Blossom Fist. The experience from this mission would be greatly helpful. A few plum blossoms fell brightly, the sunlight tinting them a light pink. Like a master calligrapher writing in cursive, the wind blew, stroking Ma Jin and the 5 martial artists. I hope the next mission is somewhere with a relay station. Yunshin thought. The passing time felt wasted. The blossoming plums lined up felt oppressive unlike before. Time never seemed to stop. It's a shame. Isn't this the heart of the Shirangssi martial world? We can't wear the uniforms of the Desolate Fortress. Wenchang grumbled. They wore plain clothes instead of the noticeable uniforms of the Desolate Fortress due to Mount Hua's dignity. It doesn't seem as prosperous as Anyang now. Yunshin replied. He had become used to handling Wenchang's idle talk. He could tell just by seeing him grin as if he hadn't grumbled a moment ago. They said Elevenon in Shirangssi is a big city where all sorts of experts gather, excluding Mount Hua and Zhongnan. I see. Yunshin replied calmly and looked around. It was indeed different. Unlike Anyang, which was filled with large merchants and various peddlers, it had a more orderly elegance. It seemed to be because it had been a prosperous city for a very long time since before the founding of the country. The group got off in front of a huge guest house with a 200-year tradition. Its exterior was almost like that of a tower. They never stayed in shabby places when passing through a city. Such was the financial power of the Desolate Fortress. Ma Jin spoke as he dismounted. Elevenon is the territory of the Zhongnan sect. It's not a place Mount Hua can meddle with as they please. We should be careful too. I didn't know I'd become more acquainted with words than with swords before entering the main city. Wenchang patted his waist and thighs. Then it happened. Suddenly, the guest house door opened. At the same time, Yunshin felt a gathering of intense energies. The masters of the Desolate Fortress have arrived. We've been waiting. There were men and women Taoists coming out in an orderly line. There were more than a dozen of them, yet they didn't seem crowded. The approaching people felt like one huge sword. The most noticeable thing was the plum blossom embroidery on the hems of everyone's white uniforms. The Mount Hua sect. The middle-aged swordsman at the front exuded a formidable presence as sharp as his appearance. It felt comparable to facing Ma Jin for the first time. Plum blossom swordsman Cheon-ju. It seems you've been here for a while. The road was rough, but we managed to make it in time. Ma Jin briefly cupped his fist. Yunshin sensed Wan Chang flinch beside him. Should he praise him for not opening his mouth and making a fuss? Leader of the Plum Blossom Swordsmen. Cheon-ju was called the Mount Hua Sword Master. It was a famous name. A name so renowned it wasn't confined to Shirangssi. An ultimate master leading the elite swordsmen of Mount Hua had come down the mountain himself. Demon Wings Captain, Alluring Sun Sword, Blue-Eyed Demon Sword. Familiar faces. Cheon-ju scanned the three of them with a blank expression. Blue-Eyed Demon Sword. Blue-Eyed Demon Sword Chong Myong. It was the first time Yunshin heard that nickname. It was quite surprising. How did he fight with enemies? When he looked back at Chong Myong, he just gave a slight smile. He couldn't help but be curious since he had only seen him lightly clash swords with the Blood Flame sect in Jinpyeong County. No need for introductions. A sword exchanged previously is enough. The clash between the Plum Blossom Swordsman and the Divine Sword Squad was a tremendously famous incident. It was said that there were no casualties on the side of the desolate fortress, but who knew about Mount Hua's side? I see you brought your disciple as well. I understand the desolate fortress intentions with this. Cheon-ju's sharp eyes seemed to pierce through Yunshin, but he passed it off indifferently. He had just dealt with the Lord of the Desolate Fortress and the previous captain of the Divine Sword Squad. Even if the Mount Hua Sword Master was a Grandmaster, he didn't measure up to them. Yunshin suddenly noticed a peer swordsman among the Mount Hua Masters. The boy looked lethargic, as if the world was insignificant, even yawning lightly. When their eyes met, the young Taoist gave a small laugh and looked up at the sky. After standing still for a moment, Ma Jin finally opened his mouth. That is. How about letting my disciple exchange swords with the Desolate Fortress disciple? Even if they recognized each other, it would be uncomfortable to travel together. It could prove to be a good little diversion. Cheon-ju turned his eyes to Ma Jin and spoke. He wants to break spirits. Mount Hua knew this journey was also a form of surveillance. It was one of the world's top sword sects. Even if they allowed it because of the royal family, they were not happy. Since it would be awkward for the leading masters to exchange swords, they wanted to compare the future of their sects. Desolate Fortress disciple. Hyon Wencheng murmured blankly. The students of the Desolate Fortress who hadn't become white uniforms yet. When Yunshin fought the blue uniform masters of the Azure Sky Squad, Ma Jin's children came to watch. They aren't officially recognized. Their internal master-disciple relationship is not acknowledged. From a young age, they are ceremoniously called Desolate Fortress disciples until they wear white. While only his face remained unchanged, the expressions of the other 4 members of the Demon Wings turned peculiar. It seems it's difficult to read strength through only energy unless you're an absolute master. My chi is relatively low, and my energy waves are weak. Yunshin, who had gained a small insight, spoke. Captain. Yes? When Ma Jin turned around, he lightly touched the sword wave of his desolate sword hanging on his waist. It was a sign that he would step forward. My master has once again caused trouble. Is 5 seconds enough? The young Taoist in front of Cheon-ju asked in a languid voice. It wasn't a small voice. Did this level of rudeness not matter? Despite being a disciple of the sect leader of Mount Hua, he seemed thoughtless. You'll learn something. Give it your all. What do you want me to learn? I heard the Demon Wings techniques are all about sensitivity. The boy sighed and walked out. Suddenly, the front of the guest house became an impromptu arena. It was said that martial fights in the martial world often started unexpectedly like this. Interesting. Yunshin recalled the Zhongnan sect masters who had inspired the swift sword at Zhong family manor. He hadn't experienced Zhongnan martial arts back then. How deep was Mount Hua's martial arts? The masters of Demon's Light and Mount Hua formed a large circle. 11 wasn't a small city. Passers-by who were curious about the commotion started turning into onlookers. Everywhere, people were whispering about Mount Hua. What's going on? Lower your voice. It's the Mount Hua sect. The sword sense of Mount Hua are in our 11. It looks like they're about to have a duel. We're in for a rare sight. Look at that extraordinary young Taoist. His energy is divine. Martial artists exchanging teachings. As expected of the Taoist Mount Hua. How generous! Yunshin laughed inwardly. It was refreshing to see them take a ceremonial stance among the common folk. It was the first time since the desolate exam. The two stood facing each other. Yunshin slowly opened his mouth. You mentioned 5 seconds. Did that offend you? Sorry. I didn't mean to belittle you. I had a tough training session this morning. The young Taoist smiled faintly. I knew Haiyan of Mount Hua. Yunshin. He answered briefly. In plain clothes, he couldn't mention Demon's Light. In the position of receiving guidance, there were murmurs of rudeness. Some were loudly exclaiming at the name Yu Haiyan. There were also martial artists from 11 present. The hidden dragon of Mount Hua. I heard the sect leader's disciple is a peerless talent. To see him in person. He's mastered the Falling Blossoms palm and the 6 Harmonies divine sword. Seeing him in person, he lives up to his reputation. Younger than expected. They said he's the future of Mount Hua. There were also rumors he started learning the Violet Dawn divine art. The titles were grand. Yunshin's smile deepened. There was no need for long talk. When 2 martial artists faced each other, they spoke with martial arts. It was when he took a step forward. Yu Haiyan's body silently grew larger. It was a movement resembling the footwork of the elven race. It was the hidden fragrance drift of Mount Hua. Whoosh! With advancing footwork, his rising hand came down. His open palm spread out like a flower pattern. Seeing the ancient sect's martial arts in person felt almost magical and splendid. Falling Blossoms palm. It's not redundant, but has many variations. To make it unbreakable. His heart was filled with interest. Wouldn't he gain the same variations if he broke them one by one? Bang! He deflected it with the back of his clenched fist. The sudden collision's force was light. Yunshin's energy continued to stretch out like a whirlwind. First move of Eternal Blossom Fist, Spiral. Whoosh dash. Could he not react? Yu Haiyan's face, filled with bewilderment, turned sharply. Even the touch of the energy wave caused this. What? He seemed shocked by the unexpected force. If he had Yu Haiyan's level of skill, he would have shattered his neck with that strike. Thud. Now it was his turn to advance. Following the retreating Yu Haiyan, Yunshin stepped forward. A straight punch from behind the waist shot out like a steel arrow from a bowstring. Second move, point-blank blast of brought thunder from the punch. Boom! The splinters of energy overturned the ground. The sunlight's halo in the mid-heaven dimmed with the dust. Yunshin's eyes were fixed straight ahead. He saw Yu Haiyan, covered in dust, deftly dispersing the residual energy with brilliant hand movements. It was the same nature as the first palm technique. Mount Hua's Falling Blossoms palm. It seemed enough to inspire the third move of Eternal Blossom Fist. Yunshin laughed joyfully and spoke. How about we go for a bit longer? I'd like a round. 10 seconds. Chapter 22, Middle Dantian, 2. He reached out toward Yu Haiyan, who charged at him with clenched teeth. A strange energy rippled around his left hand. In the next moment, the eyes of Cheong-ju and the high-ranking members of the Mount Hua sect widened. Swish dash! An intangible wave of chi burst forth from his left hand. It bloomed in bursts, like a line of flowers blossoming all at once. The force struck with such power that it created another wave of energy. It seemed like a superior martial art technique that didn't exist within the current repertoire of the Falling Blossoms palm. A martial art of a completely different level emerged immediately, making it difficult to find a connection to any existing martial techniques. Puh. A powerful shock, as strong as the point-blank blast, struck down in a heap. It was as if the dust on Yu Haiyan's martial attire had been blown away. Gah! Uwa! Yu Haiyan fell to the ground without even drawing his sword. A thin cloud of dust rose like mist. Yunshin, lowering his hand, fell into thought. The martial arts of the 9 great sects have a high level of wholeness. It truly reflects the history of the prestigious Orthodox sects. It was an impressive insight. He had not anticipated such a utilization of qi. This can be decided as the third technique here. Yunshin nodded to himself. It didn't seem to need any further refinement. He named it the third technique of the Eternal Blossom Fist, Blossom Fist. Silence filled the room. The boy, often referred to as a crouching tiger, faced off against the hidden dragon of the Mount Hua sect and defeated him in 3 moves. Yunshin thought it was natural. From the start, the levels were different. To face someone like Yunshin, who could be counted as one of the top talents even in the Desolate Fortress, it would take at least a master nearing the level of a certified Plum Blossom swordsman. Yunshin compared his situation to Yu Haion's. How much training would that boy need to reach the rank of head disciple in the Mount Hua sect? For Yunshin, who had only about 5 years left, it was hopelessly insufficient. The gap in their life standards was vast. Take him away. At Cheonju's solemn command, a warrior from the Mount Hua sect carried Yu Haion away. The gazes that swept over Yunshin were filled with astonishment. Finally, the spectators started to stir. What was that? Wasn't it just 3 moves? How could the Mount Hua sect's prodigy? 3-move defeat? Who is that boy? Amidst the murmurs, Cheonju spoke up. The Desolate Fortress has been nurturing a dragon. How much more do they intend to tighten their grip on the martial world? You're exaggerating. As long as a sect doesn't harm the people, the Desolate Fortress will not act. That convenient justification remains unchanged. Cheonju shook his head and looked at Yunshin. You are Zhong Yunshin, correct? That's right. I have witnessed excellent martial arts. It is unlikely that the martial arts of the Mount Hua sect have any connection with you. I did not know such martial arts existed in the world. It must have been a stimulus even for our complacent head disciple. If you ever have to leave the Desolate Fortress, know that the Mount Hua sect will welcome you as a guest. Enough with the nonsense. This has crossed the line. Ma Jin stepped forward, pulling Yunshin behind him. I admit my greed got ahead of me. It was an embarrassing display, but in the face of such brilliant talent, what could I do? The high-ranking members of the Mount Hua sect, seeing Cheonju admit this so straightforwardly, were surprised. Simultaneously, some showed expressions of understanding. Yunshin stood still, unmoving. You seem to be having a hard time. It was Baek Miryo's voice transmission. Yunshin nodded slightly. He had expended almost all his qi. The burden on his dantian was significant. The Eternal Blossom Fist required a high amount of qi to generate. For now, it seemed difficult to use it as his main martial art in real combat. I'll have to rely on my sword in real battles. He organized his thoughts and secured a room at the inn. Even the warriors of the Mount Hua sect who followed him seemed to look at him differently now. They looked at him as if he were some kind of marvelous creature. He felt no particular emotion. Their lives were fundamentally different from his. As soon as he secured a room, Miryo burst in, dragging along Chong Myong by the collar. You especially need to open your middle dantian quickly. If your internal energy is lacking, at least you need to supplement your stamina. Miryo said as she sat down in a meditative posture. Myong sprawled out and half lay down. Middle dantian, you say? It seems you don't know about it. Even the upper dantian, which contains the spirit in the head, cannot match its efficacy. The moment you open the middle dantian, you'll feel it. Your internal energy will become more solid. The Shailin Vajra immovable art is known for refining the middle dantian. Internal energy becoming solid. Myong interrupted when Yunshin asked absent-mindedly. It means the efficiency improves. Have you heard of masters fighting for 7 days and nights without tiring? That's because they trained their middle dantian. The flow of qi becomes robust, and they can perform large techniques multiple times. Even if they receive a strong strike, their internal energy flow won't be easily disrupted. That's probably why Chong Myong could spar with the Namgung First Sword. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense, no matter how strong his martial arts are. Miryo pointed at the yawning Myong. Myong smiled brightly and nodded his head. Yunshin glanced at him and then looked away again. Middle dantian. How do I open it? If you train your lower dantian for a long time, it will open naturally. Focusing on circulating your energy in the upper body would be good. Isn't there a faster way, sister? The word slipped out without thinking. he needed to quickly grasp any means to become stronger. In terms of martial arts and achievements, his mind was inevitably impatient. Sister. Beck Miyo's cold eye softened slightly. Her cheeks reddened a bit. For a moment, even her lips seemed to quiver. It was an unbelievable sight. The renowned alluring sun sword? She quickly regained her composure, like the experienced master she was. Yunshin couldn't help but wonder if she had a deceased younger brother. At the same time, he realized he didn't know anything about the lives of the Demon Wing warriors. I still don't know anyone. Miyo cleared her throat. First, you need to hold a strong energy within your body. The explanation continued. The issue was ultimately qi. Just as the lower dantian opens naturally with prolonged training, the middle dantian was no different. She said a clumsy shortcut would only be poisonous. On a different matter, Yunshin had been born with his upper dantian already open. A cursed constitution. Sighing inwardly, he descended to the first floor. He decided to think about the middle dantian later. I should focus on accumulating achievements. It's not like I can't become stronger without it. The inn was bustling. The smell of food was everywhere, and it was hard to find an empty seat. They said Elevenon was a place where all sorts of martial artists gathered. A peculiar city where even commoners wandered around without much fear. It seemed even more crowded as rumors spread about the sparring at the Mount Huasek dojo. That's the little swordsman. The one who defeated the Mount Hua dragon in 3 moves. He looks about the same age. How could that be possible? I saw it with my own eyes. As Yunshin descended, murmurs arose from all sides. They seemed to be people who had watched the sparring. Lightning Flash will quickly gain fame. It'll be chaos once his identity is revealed. That's expected. He is the future of the fortress. It was Mayong and Miyo. They spoke casually, but to Yunshin, it was just flattery. Compliments tied to age held no meaning for him. It was the first time he had his martial arts evaluated since coming into the world, but Yunshin let all the words go in one ear and out the other as he looked for Ma Jin. Only the seats where Wan Chang and Ma Jin were seated were empty, making them easy to spot. The intimidating aura and scars repelled others from approaching. No one dared to sit near them. Yunshin walked through the crowd towards them. Is this okay? Discussing a mission here? Yunshin asked as he sat with Mayong and Miyo. Ma Jin laughed. It's no secret that the Mount Hua sect is searching for the culprit with wide-open eyes. The movements of the prestigious orthodox sects are always under scrutiny. Doing this minimizes unexpected civilian casualties. Indeed. Have you heard of making a noise in the east and striking in the west? That's what we'll be doing now. It's not just about preventing the Mount Hua sect's military action. We actively help to calm the situation. Yes. The investigation is already concluded. The culprit is the stealthy demon. He is a well-known thief north of the Yangtze River. Stealthy demon. Miyo stood up abruptly. Her energy seemed to sharpen as if a sword was being honed within her. Indeed. He's the one who stole your secret manual. Isn't this a good turn of events? Did he steal your martial arts manual? Wan Chang stopped eating and opened his eyes wide. It was understandable. A blue-robed master of the desolate fortress was not someone a common thief could approach. The circumstances have changed. Miyo answered briefly and fell silent, but her presence had changed. It was like standing next to a blazing fire. Her intent to capture and behead the thief was palpable. The group finished their meal in silence and went up to the room where Ma Jin was staying. It was a significantly large room to match his size. After meeting the eyes of each group member, Ma Jin slowly began to speak. I will explain the strategy of making a noise in the east and striking in the west. First, the martial arts of the Mount Hua sect are widely known here in Shaanxi. They stand out too much. So, from now on, we will smash the signboards of several Shaanxi sects connected to the stealthy demon. We will do it. The fighting must not go outside. What will the Mount Hua sect do during this? Hidden fragrance drift encompasses both movement and footwork techniques. While we draw attention, they will sneak in and inspect the sect's interiors. Ma Jin spoke nonchalantly. Wan Chang's mouth curled up, seemingly pleased. Is there a justification to take down the signboards of these sects? At Yunshin's question, Chong Mayong, who was brushing his hair, laughed. You seem unfamiliar with martial artists of the unorthodox sects. They extort protection money in a way even the royal family doesn't approve of. From the perspective of the Ming Empire, the distinction between orthodox and unorthodox is simple. Do the people willingly donate, or are they extorted at knife point? Ma Jin nodded. They are parasites draining the country. New parasites form in swarms whenever we wipe them out, so we leave them be. However, there's no need for justification to strike them down. They constantly undergo cycles of annihilation and reformation. How many sects are we targeting? 5 for now. I will take on 2. I will handle one alone. No one was surprised by Yunshin's words. Ma Jin asked, "Do you seek individual credit? It's a high-risk burden. I will handle it. Managing a group alone is a different matter. Especially if the sect is proficient in martial arts. Imagine bodies piling up with every strike. The scent of blood can even drive a master insane. Group battles have the most variables. They are incomparable to one-on-one duels. That's an experience I must have. Very well. I will assign the targets now. Lightning Flash, your target is the Mantis sect in Lianhu County, 11. They are known to be very vicious. They said they even kidnap women. Your mission is..." Ma Jin continued, locking eyes with Yunshin. "To annihilate the entire sect. Wipe them all out." Chapter 23, Middle Dantian, 3. An escort followed them. He was a native of the village. There is a certain image that comes to mind when thinking of commoners who do not know martial arts and engage in their livelihood. The man who introduced himself as a Mr. Jiang was like that. "Master, is it really just you? Are you sure you're going to the Mantis sect?" His eyes trembled, and he was shorter than Yunshin. In his shabby hemp clothes and the loose pouch he held, the appearance of a family breadwinner was reflected. Yunshin understood his reaction. The demonic sect was different from the black market thugs in the back alleys. The black market thugs would find and retaliate against anyone who informed the authorities, but the demonic sect members were skilled in martial arts. It was natural to be anxious. "I am enough. Why, your righteous spirit is truly admirable. However, please reconsider. The Mantis sect is not an ordinary group. Dozens have learned martial arts, and it was said that even a single one of their underlings could sweep the alley of Liangu. Righteous spirit? You seem to have some educational background. It was not a world where letters were common. In some places, expressions that were taken for granted were known only to scholars in the countryside. I am just a country bumpkin who didn't pass the imperial examination. It was fortunate that they could communicate. 11 was a big city, so they had to stay overnight to reach Lianhu County. Could you tell me more about the Mantis sect?" Yunshin spoke while walking ahead. At the same time, he took out a small salt pouch from his chest and handed it over. The monthly salary from Desolate Fortress was paid in silver coins, but giving it to someone was too much, and there were no copper coins. Ma Jin had taken care of the travel expenses. Mr. Jiang, who subtly opened the pouch, widened his eyes and spoke. "They came in 3 years ago, subduing Liangu Street. There are not many places in 11 without Zhongnan sect branches, and Lianhu County was one of them. They took over 10 people as maids. Their villainy was severe, but it seemed they had bribed the magistrate well. Did anyone see their martial arts? What about their martial arts? I heard they use all kinds of weapons. I also saw them from afar a few times, and there were not only swords and spears but also strangely curved blades. They were so fast that it was hard to follow with the eyes. With one swing, they could cut off the heads of 2 people. They were quite strong. Even if they didn't have a structured martial arts system, they seemed to have learned martial arts. That was enough to call them members of the demonic sect. Are there still many people captured? What is the government doing? The magistrate is also in league with the Mantis sect, so there is no place to turn to." Yunshin suddenly had a question. Could a martial artist from Desolate Fortress behead a government official? They stayed overnight at an inn they came across while traveling. Yunshin and Mr. Jiang arrived at Lianhu County. After crossing the hills, a vibrant village came into view. They passed several times the caravan procession loaded with all sorts of goods. Although it was said to be on par with Shinya County, it was much more developed. It seemed to be somewhere between a city and a village. I see where it is. Under the clear blue sky without a cloud in sight, there was an unusually large and splendid building at the end of the road. The letters on the plaque were visible even from here. Although it was not as grand as the Demon Wings mansion, it was incomparable to the Zhong family manor. Even the spacious front yard seemed usable as a training hall. "You can go now. Thank you for the guidance." After exchanging greetings, they turned away. As he headed towards the largest street that ran through the village, he felt someone following. It seemed to be Mr. Jiang. He didn't know why. Did his family get captured? Maybe his wife or daughter was taken. They entered a street that looked like a market. Merchants were quietly exchanging meat or grain at the lined-up stalls. The voices of haggling were not loud. When he turned his head to a place where everyone seemed to be cautious, he saw a surprising sight. There were people tied up as if they were traitors. They were all women. 5 martial artists with swords were sitting carelessly, while their families were just weeping, unable to approach. Would their heads be cut off if they made a sound? The atmosphere on both sides was extremely different, as if it were a village custom. This really just serves to justify the existence of the desolate fortress. He spoke deliberately as he approached. Because of martial artists, the laws of the Great Ming dynasty were trampled. The Central Plains was said to be a vast land beyond the comprehension of the human mind. If a few magistrates and a powerful gang colluded, it would be extremely difficult for the imperial family to know the local situation. Are they government soldiers? Are those tied up really criminals? No answer came. As soon as Yunshin finished speaking, a throwing knife was hurled at him, tearing through the air. It didn't even carry any strength. Yunshin caught it directly and performed a swift sword strike, releasing the grip in his hand. Even so, the sword's force was properly exerted. The dagger shot out like a flash, piercing through the air. Thunk! The one hit on the forehead fell as if nailed to the ground. The 4, who had been momentarily bewildered, soon got up one by one. Quite a skilled lad. Where did you study martial arts? Your knife-throwing technique was odd. Did you really learn it properly? It was pretty fast. You must have been biding your time for today. What was that martial art you just showed? Maybe because he threw it casually, the reaction was quite calm. When thinking of the demonic sect, one might imagine a reckless bandit, but the ones in front of him seemed to have tasted all the pleasures in the world. Just random skills, no names. Yunshin murmured calmly, drawing his desolate sword. The white blade of the meticulously maintained fine sword scattered the sunlight under his hand. Their gazes changed. If we present this to the sect leader. Splash! At the end of the dazzling trajectory of the blade, a burst of blood shot up. The one who had mentioned the sect leader knelt with blood-stained lips and then collapsed. Before they knew it, Yunshin was standing in the middle of them. With a leap like treading on the wind and a rotation like a leaf, the sword strike erupted. Before the other 3 could even turn around, the white sword path flickered. Demon's light, swift sword. The sensation of cutting 3 times transmitted through the sword wave to his hand. It was a very familiar feeling. Shit! It was a curse muttered by one of them before dying. Yunshin turned around and cut the ropes binding the captives. The women, thanking him with folded hands, could not openly rejoice. The direction they glanced at repeatedly with Yunshin was the Mantis sect's building. It doesn't seem like they were taking in maids. With doubts, he walked along the road, his blade unsheathed. Now the street was completely quiet. Everyone retreated, trying to stay out of sight. He could hear the murmurs of old people clicking their tongues, thinking an innocent hero would die. Only Mr. Jiang was quietly following behind. A group battle. It was said that the absolute masters who reached invincibility could handle an entire army alone. The supreme masters of Desolate Fortress would be no different. Since the fight with the Blood Master, he had consistently thought of solo missions. No matter how much he pondered, there were limits to the merits he could achieve by moving with the experts of Demon Wings. To walk the martial realm alone, one must be capable of facing dozens or even hundreds of swords. A duel with a rival was usually the romance of dilettantes. One must also be equipped with martial arts capable of handling a group's swords. He was learning from every fight. Even he did not know what his mind would create. Mantis sect. He looked up at the main gate before he knew it. Up close, the plaque was even bigger. The calligraphy writing Mantis sect was impressive. It felt so lively, like a dragon moving. Did a third-rate demonic sect threaten a fallen scholar? Thinking it excessive, he kicked one side of the gate hard. Did they claim Linhu County as their territory? About 30 martial artists lined up in a training hall to greet the swordsman who had just slain 5 of their own. The news traveled incredibly fast. Is that kid supposed to be a threat? A middle-aged man standing alone on the steps leading to the main building frowned. Yunshin's eyes were drawn to his clothes. They were incredibly lavish. From mythical beasts to dragons, all sorts of spiritual creatures were embroidered on his long robe. He must be crazy. Was he a rebel? Wearing a robe with dragons embroidered on it. It was a stark reminder of how detached martial artists were from the state. Cut off his limbs and bring him here. Actually, don't. I haven't felt the taste of a sword in a while. I'll do it myself. The man, who appeared to be the sect leader, descended the steps. Yunshin felt a sense of discord. The Mantis sect was said to be a vicious demonic sect. He expected them to take hostages. These were the kind of people who would forcibly take women. If it were a lawless sect, they would have women at their side, yet only men were present. Where have the captives gone? While he was pondering, the Mantis sect disciples surrounding him were generally burly. They exchanged a few words and just grinned wickedly, not appearing kindly at all. It's not often you get to meet a hero. The Mantis sect leader drew his sword as he descended. The narrow sword emitted waves of chi. Yunshin would not have been able to defeat a master of his caliber during the desolate exam. The sect leader continued to speak. Why did you have to appear in front of this sect? Why commit suicide at your age? What's your name? Why would a dead man need to know my name? To claim my merit, I need to know who the sect leader is. Yunshin spoke slowly and simultaneously activated the energy of Zhong family dynamic training. At the moment when the desolate sword and his chi became one, he sensed the sword technique of the opponent. Swish tilde. Even the humble skewer of the sect leader felt threatening since his blade followed the winds. To counter, Yunshin used swift sword. After discovering how to properly control force through the eternal blossom fist, he could now see the path of the sword. Clang! He struck upwards. Although it looked calm, true chi was overlaid. The sect leader's face turned from surprise to bewilderment at the force of Yunshin's strike that overwhelmed his power. Attack! At the sect leader's shout, the surrounding Mantis sect disciples charged in. A sharp spear obstructed his view first. As if to prevent him from giving the second strike to the sect leader, the desolate sword struck and passed through the thrusting spear. Slash! The spear shaft was cut, and at the same time, the other disciples' weapons were approaching. Throwing knives flew towards him. All the sharp weapons cutting through the air from all directions stimulated Yunshin's entire body. It was his first time facing so many weapons at once. Swish! He dodged a slash on his right arm, only to get scraped on his back by a chakram. He swung the desolate sword horizontally in a swift sword strike. The man holding the circular blade handle grinned, but his head flew off with the same smile on his face. The sight of his lips freezing in place flashed across Yunshin's vision. It hurts. The stinging wound sharpened his senses and extended his perception. In that moment, his unbelievable talent revealed itself. He saw the lines created by all the blades. The sword path he should follow began to emerge in his mind. Strike, pass through, and strike again. The combined pressure from the weapons evolved Yunshin's swift sword, creating a new form. Following the trajectory visible only to him, he slashed down. His desolate sword, faster and sharper than anything else there, deflected the weapons and led them to clash against each other. The throwing knife deflected by the desolate sword pierced another disciple's heart. He deflected one man's spear, which then impaled another man who was swinging a blade. Ah! Yunshin's eyes moved swiftly. All the approaching weapons seemed to fuel a strange sense. It was as if another self was watching from above, observing every blind spot. It surpassed the realm of prediction. With movements as light as the wind, he weaved through the space of the blades. Sand thrown by one was caught by another. The sect leader's swift sword, however, was clearly of a different level. As Yunshin spun and moved in a gust, he swung at the side of the sect leader's narrow blade. Clang! The sect leader, almost dropping his sword, disappeared back among the disciples and shouted. Incredible accomplishment! But your sword path is simple. I've already seen through your swift sword. It was a voice laden with the experience of countless battles. It did not sound impatient. It seemed so leisurely, but as he confronted Yunshin, who had crossed all the attacks like a leaf in the wind, the sect leader fell silent. Overwhelm them with initiative, Yunshin thought. In an instant, true chi surged like wildfire throughout his whole body. He thought of his hand as a fist. The energy of the eternal blossom fist began to climb up his arm. The second move, point-blank blast, was now possible. The still somewhat unfamiliar intangible force was contained in his grip. Naturally, he felt the augmenting force of the demon's light enhancing his balance. Boom! Closing the distance like a storm, he was suddenly in front of the sect leader. In a flash, he focused the force from the point-blank blast into his sword arm, releasing a sword wave. The sect leader's eyes widened in surprise. From above the sect leader's head, Yunshin brought his sword down. Th. At the moment the sect leader opened his mouth, a pure white blade light flashed, the sensation coursing through Yunshin like lightning. Chapter 24, Middle Dantian, 4. The fallen corpse of the Mantis sect leader brought silence. The reckless blow seemed to have done its job. The sinister laughter of the surrounding Mantis sect members vanished without a trace. The Mantis sect leader's body bore the marks of an overwhelming sword strike. The intense scent of blood rising from his body made the unreal death feel real. Yunshin turned his head away from the wretched body and opened his mouth to speak. He held the desolate sword dripping with blood. Today, we will destroy the Mantis sect's plaque. What? Why you crazy? Finally, the stunned Mantis sect disciple spoke, retreating in shock. Amidst the silence, someone muttered about the unprecedented sword technique. To those living in the narrow martial realm, Yunshin's sword had that kind of meaning. He gained momentum. He didn't give his enemies time to think. Though his chi wasn't complete due to using the eternal blossom fist, the sensation he gained here was enough to handle these kinds of opponents. Step. When he took a step forward, many cowards stepped back in unison. The loyalty of demonic martial artists was different from that of honorable knights. They were people who bought and sold martial arts. Their lives were worth a penny. Kill him. Let's kill him. You crazy bastard. You go. An invincible monster. Divine sword. A monster and a divine sword, indeed. At this moment, Yunshin realized that not all martial arts worldviews were the same. In the desolate fortress, one would never hear such words. There's nothing more to gain here. Yunshin began his sword attack again. These were not the enemies he had first faced. He wedged his way through the weakened net of swords, delivering swift attacks. It was a sword technique the Mantis sect disciples couldn't handle. Finally, some of them started to flee. Ah! We're doomed. The sect is finished. Call the sect's sword. Call the sect's sword. In the midst of this, one shouted something that made everyone pause. Yunshin was no exception. If they were calling a sect's sword in faith, it must be the Blood Master of the Blood Flame sect. Answer me. Is the Blood Flame sect behind this? Did you offer the captured people to them? He grabbed one man's arm with a joint lock and twisted it while holding the sword's blue blade to his throat. The man screamed, sweating profusely. Yes, yes. They are probably sleeping in the annex now. It's always been that way. You don't know the experts. Could they not sense this level of battle? Spare me. Faced with a life-or-death situation, compassion was pushed to the back of his mind. He raised the desolate sword, which had just grazed the man's neck, without emotion. The chi, faster than before, contained the principles of the Fatebreaker's Codex. The layered chi filled the acupoints of his right arm, waist, and lower body, creating a stance akin to an ancient tree standing tall on the ground. Clang! A sudden sword strike hit the desolate sword. There was no sound of tearing the air. At the same time, only the crimson hair brushed past Yunshin's forehead. The vibration in his grip was the most intense he'd felt from anyone in the Mantis sect. Bloodmaster. You blocked that? Then this massacre must be your doing. Massacre. That's not a word the Blood Flame sect should be uttering. Yunshin answered calmly, looking ahead. He had the same visual traits as the Bloodmaster from Jinpyeong County. A mix of black and red hair, a blood-red martial uniform. Bloodstains covered his lips. He emitted an ominous aura from his entire body, along with the iron sword he held. He recalled Ma Jin's comment when discussing Yunshin's achievements. Killing 5 Blood Masters would earn him a blue uniform, regardless of age. Though of course, Ma Jin said so jokingly. The Blood Flame sect wasn't a group that could be found easily. Ho, lucky me. What? 3 remain. In the past, he would have charged at Yunshin no matter what he said. Now it was different. He seemed wary of Yunshin, revealing his momentum and moving his feet slightly to the side. It was true that a Blood Master was an uncommon expert. Unlike the Mantis sect members, he felt Yunshin's presence. Yunshin did not wait. Ha! Power gathered in his legs as he kicked off the ground. With a heavy thud, he charged forward, unleashing the demon's light swift sword. The straight flash collided with the man's sword. Clang! Thanks to the preemptive strike, the Blood Master could not put in his full strength. Though he managed to block the attack, he was clearly pushed back. Yunshin decided to finish it here. A Blood Master was not an easy opponent. Considering he was in the middle of the Mantis sect, the longer the fight dragged on, the lower his chances of victory would get. In an instant, a gleam of sky blue light swept through his body. The sharpened senses from group combat emitted an invisible light in his eyes that penetrated the back of the retreating enemy. Yunshin pierced through with the chi gathered in his left hand, which took the spiral palm stance of the Eternal Blossom Fist. Here! It was the realm of instinct. He enveloped the desolate sword layer by layer while infusing the spiral palm of the Eternal Blossom Fist into the demon's light swift sword. Combining with the sword, he folded space. Swoosh! With little force, he penetrated the Blood Master in one go. This was the essence of the swift sword. A way for shallow swordsmen to survive. The blood hit by a gentle breeze splashed lightly. Ha! Ha! The peculiar aura of the Blood Flame sect dispersed. The eyes of the second Blood Master grew as large as they could. To the Blood Master, Yunshin was akin to a god of death. Yunshin could feel his emotions directly. It was evident from the tremor transmitted through the sword. With eyes filled with resentment, the Blood Master opened his mouth. You? I don't listen to last words. Yunshin's arm muscles suddenly became prominent as he swung at the Blood Master's neck, beheading him. He didn't even use internal energy. Thud! The Blood Master's head and body finally fell to the ground, but Yunshin did not pay it any mind. As he brought the desolate sword to his side, blood flew off the shimmering blade. Do not even attempt to flee. He spoke softly. As if they had mastered the silent steps technique, those who had been quietly retreating stopped. His voice, free of chi, completely dominated the Mantis sect. Yunshin split the Mantis sect's plaque in half in front of all the people of Lianhu County. While some rejoiced, trampling the shattered plaque, others wept, holding the emaciated corpses of their loved ones. Dozens of bodies were found in the annex and backyard of the Mantis sect. It was like in Jinpyeong County. Despite unexpected achievements, it was bitter. Yunshin glanced back, carrying a large sack on his back. Some had survived, but the Mantis sect disciples, who had their arms cut off by Yunshin, were being trampled by the villagers. Though they had mastered demonic martial arts, it was useless because their dantians were destroyed. Unable to control their bodies, they were completely disabled. Westernan is the Zhongnan sect's territory. What had they been doing? Mr. Jiang reacted to Yunshin's muttered words. He was carrying his daughter's shrouded body on his back. The Zhongnan sect is at war with the Tyrant Sword sect. His words were slurred from his bloodshot eyes. Yunshin frowned. The Zhongnan sect is at war with the Tyrant Sword sect. He had never heard such a rumor. The conversation stopped. Images of his only niece and the Zhongnan sect experts flashed through his mind. At the end was the master of the Tyrant Sword sect. The one who destroyed a family with the aura of an absolute master. Even now, he couldn't understand why. When did it start? I don't know. I only heard that the nearby martial artists of the Zhongnan sect were packing up and heading to the Zhongnan mountains. Yunshin remained silent. If they were facing the Tyrant Sword sect, the Zhongnan sect must be fighting for their lives. If they clashed head-on, it wouldn't end with the death of a few experts. There were plenty of reasons to fight. The master of the Tyrant Sword sect had cut off the ear of Elder Yi Il-sin. They had clashed more than once before. Though the main reason Yunshin was silent was because he still didn't know the reason behind the destruction of the Zhong family. Why had the Zhongnan sect expert stayed at the Zhong family home at that time? It was unnatural to anyone. There was no sin in little Hai-Ah. He hoped her uncle, Zhong Jungsan, was properly protecting her. I need to go to Zhongnan. Ma Jin would permit it. The 13 Heavens was a force that acted as the supreme power in the demonic martial world. It was inevitable that the desolate fortress would intervene, and slaying the experts of the tyrant sword sect would build his achievements. Yunshin now had the desolate fortress as his background. He possessed enough martial prowess to handle most warriors. It's a chance to gain more merit. I need to know now. Why the Zhong family was destroyed. Why the tyrant sword sect and the blood flame sect collaborated to annihilate the Zhong family. The Zhongnan sect would know. You have appeased my grudge and helped my daughter find peace. Thank you, young master. Thank you so much. This gentleman's name is Yunshin from the Zhong family. You must never forget this name. Master Zhong. Master Zhong is here. Receiving the gratitude of Mr. Jiang and the villagers, he turned away. When they suggested holding a feast to celebrate, he declined, telling them to use the food for the funeral instead. As a result, there were those who began to mutter his name as if engraving it in their minds. He lightly placed one hand on the sword guard, while his other hand held the end of the sack slung over his back. Walking a bit faster, he reached a hill overlooking Lianhu County. Have you found any traces of the stealthy demon? Yunshin suddenly spoke, stopping in his tracks. The bushes nearby rustled. 2 figures emerged. It was Cheonju, Mount Hua sect's heavenly swordmaster, and Yu Haion, the hidden dragon of the Mount Hua sect. It seems it wasn't the Mantis sect. Perhaps because he had witnessed the destruction of a sect, Cheonju's demeanor was much more respectful than before. He wasn't just treating Yunshin as a promising talent, but rather as a fully qualified martial artist of the desolate fortress. Yunshin nodded and spoke. I see. That's unfortunate. I was impressed by your martial prowess. It felt like I was witnessing the future leader of the Demon Wings or even the Divine Sword Squad. Our sect's future prospect here must have had his horizons broadened. Cheonju patted Yu Haion on the back of his neck. As his hairpin shook, Yu Haion frowned slightly, glancing at Yunshin. The drowsy look he had before now appeared exceptionally clear. It was my first defeat. Every time I think of the 5-second finger snap, I feel like falling off my bed. Your first defeat? Yunshin tilted his head slightly. Yu Haion waved his hand dismissively. All my seniors and juniors are much older. The only ones around my age are low-level martial artists, and their skills are too shallow. Are there no peers in Mount Hua? I am the only disciple of my rank. So. At his indifferent response, Yu Haion looked down slightly. How about becoming friends with me? You seem interested in Mount Hua's martial arts. Guangding isn't far from Shirangssi. I have no reason to go to Mount Hua. If you come to me, I won't refuse. But each time, you must bring a new martial art. Yu Haion, unfamiliar with rejection, was visibly flustered. However, at Yunshin's final words, his face brightened. During the journey to the gathering place in Shirangssi, he had to endure Yu Haion's endless chatter. He spoke just as much as Wan Chang, but about different things. The principles of martial arts, the orthodox martial philosophy of the 9 great sects, was helpful to Yunshin. Occasionally, Cheonju would comment on it as well, giving Yunshin glimpses of inspiration. It's helpful. I look forward to Mount Hua's visit. After a day's walk, they arrived at the first inn they found in Shirangssi. That was as far as the pleasant time went. He entered Ma Jin's room. Your chi has slightly changed again. Did you get slashed on the back? I'll apply some wound medicine, so sit down. Lightning flash, what about the mission? While Chong Myong, Baek Myo, Ma Jin, and Haion Wenchang watched, he spoke about going to Zhongnan. After hearing the circumstances, Ma Jin seemed troubled and was about to speak when Yunshin opened the sack he was holding and emptied its contents. It was the head of the Blood Master and the broken plaque of the Mantis sect.